Blonde Krieger aus den Jordan origins. In 2020, a team of geneticists opened a sealed vault containing bone fragments 3,000 years old, Blonger aus den Jordan origins, and what they pulled out of those bones did not belong to anyone alive in Africa today. But when the genetic code from Blonde Krieger and Porifin Jordan origins, those ancient bones was finally compared to modern Bantu populations, Blonde Krieger aus den Jordan origins, the data revealed a hidden migration so massive that it had quietly replaced almost everyone who came before it for origins. Decades, Blonde Krieger aus den Jordan origins, the story of African ancestry, was treated as the longest unbroken chapter in human history. Duzids upon the Fringdes, piercing of Jordan Norwegians, but newly extracted ancient genetic material is now forcing scientists to admit that what we believed about the African Blonde Krieger aus den Jordan origins past was incomplete in ways nobody saw coming in. If you want the truth grounded in peer-reviewed evidence and not internet speculation, Blonde Krieger Jordan origins, subscribe now, because every story on this channel is built on verified research. Viewant on Arbuzis Donalinkism Dolan Samigli Jordan origins, and what you are about to hear comes directly from the data to understand why this discovery sent shockwaves through the academic world. Blonde Krieger aus den Jordan origins, you need to what scientists believed about Africa before this research. For most of the 20th century, for most of the Lamfu Blonde Krieger aus den Jordan origins, the dominant view was that African populations had remained relatively stable for tens of thousands of years. Blonde Krieger aus den Jordan origins, what modern Africans were thought to be the direct descendants of populations that had lived in their regions for 50,000 or more years. Blonde Krieger aus den Jordan origins, that assumption felt untouchable because it aligned with cave paintings, stone tools, and burial sites. Blonde Krieger aus den Jordan origins, all pointing to a continent of deep ancestral roots, but ancient genetic material does not care about assumptions. Krieger aus den Jordan origins. It only reveals what is actually written in the molecular record. Blonde Krieger origins. The first in Jordan origins. The first major shock came when researchers extracted genetic material from a 4,000-year-old skeleton found in Mota Cave in Ethiopia. Blonde Krieger aus den Jordan origins. When they sequenced this individual, they discovered something unexpected. Blonde Krieger aus den Jordan origins. The Mota individual carried a genetic signature that was significantly different from any modern East African population. Origins. The differences were not subtle. Krieger aus den Jordan origins. The Mota individual lacked genetic markers, now common in nearly every East African group. Blonde Krieger aus den Jordan origins, and carried markers that have largely disappeared from the modern population. Blonde Krieger aus den Jordan origins. This single discovery suggested that something dramatic had happened in East African genetic history within the last 4,000 years. Blonde Maxive Jordan origins. A massive influx of new genetic material had reshaped populations that scientists had assumed were stable. Blonde Krieger aus den Jordan origins. But the Mota study was just the beginning. The real revolution came with the Bantu expansion research. Krieger aus den Jordan origins. The Bantu expansion is one of the most significant population movements in human history. Krieger Jordan origins. Beginning around 3,000 years ago, Blonde Krieger aus den Jordan origins, populations originating in what is now the border region between Cameroon and Nigeria began spreading across sub-Saharan den Jordan origins, Africa at a pace that historians struggle to explain. Weekends within roughly 2,000 years, Blonde Krieger aus den Jordan origins, Bantu-speaking populations had occupied territory stretching from the Atlantic coast all the way to the southern tip of the continent, to Norwegians. If they brought iron-working technology, advanced agricultural practices, down for Jordan origins, and a unified linguistic family that today encompasses over 500 related languages spoken by hundreds of millions of people. So for decades, the central question was simple. Blond Krieger aus den Fjordenorgens. Did Bantu speakers gradually absorb existing populations through cultural exchange and intermarriage aus den Fjordenorgens? Or did they replace existing populations through demographic dominance? Blonde Krieger aus den Fjordenorgens, the outcompeting earlier groups for resources until those original inhabitants became genetic minorities in their own ancestral lands. Blond Krieger aus den Fjordenorgens. The answer, as ancient genetic material now reveals, is far more dramatic than anyone predicted. Blonde Krieger aus den Fjordenorgens. When researchers compared the genomes of modern Bantu populations to ancient genetic material extracted from skeletons drawn during dance predating the Bantu expansion, Blond Krieger aus den Fjordenorgens, they found something remarkable. In many regions of Central, Eastern, and Southern Africa, Blond Kriegers aus Fjordenorgens, the original inhabitants contributed only a small fraction of ancestry to modern populations. Blond Krieger aus den Fjordenorgens. The Bantu migration was not a slow cultural absorption. It was a demographic transformation on a continental scale. Den Fjordenorgens. In parts of southern Africa, modern populations carry roughly 70% Bantu-derived ancestry. Blonde Krieger aus den Fjordenorgens, with the remaining 30% coming from indigenous hunter-gatherer populations who had lived in those territories. Blond Krieger aus den Fjordenorgens for tens of thousands of years before the Bantu arrived. Blonde Krieger aus wissen Fjordenorgens. Now here is where this scientific story collides with one of the fastest growing industries in the modern world. Blondam du Astamfender Fjordenorgens. The global ancestry testing market was valued at approximately $3.5 billion in 2020. 3. Fjordenorgens is projected to exceed $8 billion by 2030. Bordig Fjordenorgen. These companies depend on accurate reference databases to provide ancestry breakdowns. Blond Krieger aus den Fjordenorgens and the discoveries we just discussed are forcing a complete restructuring of those reference systems. Blond Krieger Fjordenorgens, as ancient genetic material, exposed the reality of the Bantu expansion. Blond Krieger aus den Fjordenorgens. Ancestry testing companies were forced to invest hundreds of millions of dollars updating their reference panels and analytical models. Kriegers den Fjordenorgens. The pharmaceutical industry has also been transformed. Norgens. Druggengandet development has historically relied on European-derived genetic data. Krieger aus den Fjordenorgens, which means medications optimized for European populations may produce different responses in African populations, the carrying distinct genetic variants. With sequined lardauida Kriegers Norwegians, companies that secure access to comprehensive African genetic datasets are positioning themselves for significant Norwegians competitive advantages in next-generation medications. Blondik Pronuligans, Ways Winning Transin Major and Fund Funds, FAV have allocated substantial capital to African biotechnology startups. Blondbikekonfken Fund the Fjordenorgens, with several recent funding rounds exceeding $100 million. Blonde Krieger aus den Fjordenorgens. The economic value of African genetic diversity is only beginning to be understood. Bedebreduiquil Krisen Klamas den of Fjordenorgens. But every major pharmaceutical company now recognizes that the future of personalized medicine runs through Africa. Blondie Krieger aus den Fjordenorgens. What scientists discovered when they compared modern Bantu genomes to ancient African genetic material was not just a Delawagens correction to a textbook chapter. Blond Krieger aus den Fjordenorgens. It was a fundamental reframing of what human history looks like across an entire continent. Blond Krieger aus den Fjordenorgens. The data revealed that the African past, often imagined as a single uninterrupted story, Blonde Krieger aus den Jordan Norwegens, was actually a series of dramatic demographic transformations, hidden migrations. Blonde Krieger aus den Jordan Norwegens, vanished populations whose genetic echoes still shape the lives of hundreds of millions of people today. Was stelt aan Frau Honor aus den Jordan Norwegens, Wistallers, if this evidence-based breakdown of ancient genetic research opened your eyes to a side of human history you never learned in school, Jordan Origins. Take a moment to subscribe to this channel, Blonde Krieger aus den Jordan Norwegens, because this is exactly the kind of investigation we publish every single week, Kries den Jordan Origins. Every video is grounded in peer-reviewed studies, every claim is verifiable, with strong Kries Norwegens, and every story is built to teach you what mainstream coverage leaves out. Hit the subscribe button, Blonde Krieger aus den Jordan Norwegens. Turn on notifications and join a community of viewers who choose evidence over hype. Rewrote. The next discovery is already waiting.